Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Margaret Romero, and today's guest is none other than Rebecca Campbell. She's a best-selling author, spiritual teacher, grounded spiritual mentor, and soulful guide. She is the best-selling author of Light is the New Black and Rise, Sister, Rise, which is a book that I absolutely love. She draws on her unique experience as an award-winning advertising creative director and loves helping people tap into their creativity and lead from a place that is authentic and lights up the world in the way that only they can. So we really got down into talking a lot about Shakti, which is our feminine power as women. And I love this. So we talked about different ways of kind of creating this and bringing out this energy in a more real sense. We also talked about accessing your intuition, and we also shared our thoughts on being clairsentient. So we both sort of feel the same way when it comes to being in large crowds, though I think that she may be a little bit more sensitive than I am when it comes to that. But we did share our experiences with being clairsentient. And then we really started talking about her book, Rise, Sister, Rise, which is such a potent book. And for women out there that are completely, getting really grounded in their power as women, this is a really great book. I loved it. And we talked about how she was able, she was getting sort of like these downloads and guidances to write this book. And she would write one small section and then need to take a nap and go to sleep because it would be so draining for her. So we talked a lot about that. And also about her rituals and her spiritual practices, which I was so curious about because it definitely is a part of her life. And we kind of get a sneak peek into that, which is pretty cool. So I hope you enjoy this episode and on to the show. Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am so excited today to introduce you to someone whose book has completely resonated with me on such a beautiful, deep level. She really hits the core of what I believe that women today need to, we need to be able to rise to a certain level and continue to rise. And I see this trend happening right now. And she so beautifully writes this in her book. So I am so happy to introduce Rebecca Campbell, a spirit-led writer and best-selling author of Rise, Sister, Rise, and Light is the New Black. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure, Margaret. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me to have this conversation.
Yes. So there's so many things. Well, one of the first things that you talk about in your book is talking about how to access Shakti, which is like this energy that comes through us. Maybe we can start a little bit with first, what is Shakti? What do you consider Shakti to be? And then how can women access that?
So I see Shakti as first of all, it's the name of my little puppy who's just walked into the room. But besides that, which be careful if you name your dog Shakti. because it means that you can't really say no Shakti without inquiring
true.
deeply into yourself.
Right.
But Shakti to me it's like the divine universal spiritual energy. It's like everything and nothing all at once in the universe. I do see it as the feminine force, and from a technical point of view, I see it like spiraling like a snake, like a serpent up the spine and through all the chakras, like really weaving its way through. I feel like a lot of women, and particularly men too, but a lot of us have really begun to experience like the Shakti rising awakening. For me, that really happened in potency around 2011, 2012. I'd had my first like significant spiritual awakening when I was much younger, and it was when I first started meditating. I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was meditating, and I remember just like my leg twitching and kind of like feeling this surge through my body, through my stomach in particular. And I remember going home and telling my mum that I learned how to meditate at lunchtime today, but it made me feel all funny. And it wasn't like it made me feel bad. It just made me feel uncomfortable because it was like this surge of power within me. And so at that age, I just kind of like pushed it down and kind of like wasn't really sure if I wanted to feel it. But then back in 2000, fast forward to 2011 and 2012, that awakening really did happen in full force for me. And a lot of people, when they experience their Shakti awakening, some people don't receive that many symptoms, whereas others, and me certainly at this point in my life, I really experienced it where I'd be waking up and I'd find myself almost like shaking, which sounds a bit weird if you haven't experienced it, but I believe it's like that coiled and I'd say in a lot of us kind of like pushed down. It's a sexual energy. It's the universal spiritual energy. It's the force that I believe is woven through all of life. And when we experience and allow our Shakti to rise and kind of like spiral through us effortlessly, then it's my belief that actually when we surrender to that and do things which allow the Shakti to really be woven through us, it's almost like we surrender back into the Shakti which is woven in all of life.
And how I know, so it's already in us, right? It's sort of innate, it's part of us.
Yeah.
Yet I don't think that many of us really feel that on a day-to-day basis, right?
Absolutely.
And so how do we access something like that in order to be able to create on such a bigger level and attract things into our life that we really love and desire?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different like practices which I'm sure like you cover in this podcast, which I think can kind of allow us to really surrender to that divine cosmic force. Like Kundalini yoga is like that's really Kundalini. It's Kundalini Shakti,
Right.
And so that's like a form of yoga, but it's like a technology which is really designed to surrender to that and allow that to rise within us. There's also my favorite form is like, there's forms of dance called like Shakti dancing, Koya, lots of different forms of free ecstatic dance where you actually kind of like, I see all that dance which allows the Shakti to move through us, almost like, there's dancing where you go to a nightclub or you go to a dance class and you do it from your mind in the sense of like, when I'm going to do this move and then this move. And then there's the dance that comes from deep within. And I believe that that's a magnificent exercise in allowing the Shakti to really flow through us. But I feel like it doesn't even have to be like the physical movement thing. For me, I think what really allowed me to connect with it at first was deeply connecting with nature. Because again, it's like that Shakti, which is within us, is also within all of life. And particularly, like I'm such a fan of Mother Nature. It's like, I feel like nature is just by far the best teacher we will ever have, better than a book. And she's teaching us how to be human and how to survive in the world, like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, every moment of every day. And I feel like, you know, in our modern world, and I know this must come through so strongly in the work you do with like busy women in the in urban areas, and even not just urban areas. It's like we've become cut off from that life force. And I really feel that, like, if we spend time deeply connecting with nature, and it doesn't have to be every day because, you know, it's not possible for all of us to do that, but, you know, on a regular basis, just like really connecting with some form of nature, I think that, you know, that's a really effortless way to allow the Shakti within us to begin to kind of weave and rise.
And is it something that once we access that, or we start to feel it, or we're out in nature, or even through dance, is it something that we're like, oh my God, I mean, what if we had like, let's say we wanted to manifest something, and what if we combined the thought of what it was that we were truly deeply desiring, and you combined it with dance, or you combined it on your hike, or does it magnify? Or yeah.
That's such a cool question, and I think absolutely. And, you know, I haven't really thought of it in quite this way yet, but what feels like it's coming through is that it's almost like the reason that it does magnify is because it's not just because, like, we're more powerful or whatever when we're like that, or more aligned within us. I guess it's because we're more aligned with the rest of life. And so if you imagine, it's like we're just attracting, like we're part of everything. Everything is one, right? And when we're in that Shakti space, then it's like actually we can almost touch what we're attracting because it is part of us, because we've like synced back into that flow. That's a really cool idea. It sounds like you do that often.
You know what? I do. What I'll do is I'll put a really great song on, and I will dance sort of just in my true nature of like wild and free, right? And then, but at the same time, I'm thinking of that thing that I want, and I'm feeling that it's already here. Like I have it. And so I have this like sort of ecstatic happiness that comes to me like, oh my God, yes. Can you believe that I have this thing, that I conjured it? And as I'm thinking it, I am like in the flow of movement. And so what I found, and then like all of this energy, just, you know, you start to feel the energy through your body, just even by the movement. And that in itself has sort of, and then I'll get like a phone call later or an email. Like it wild.
Works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I know. I do a thing called it's like the thank you dance. So like, you know, anytime I like send off like something important, like say it's like, you know, the proposal for my next book or whatever it is, it's like, and then you just put on a song and do a dance as in like, woohoo, it's coming.
Yeah. So what you're thinking is that it's already happened. Like it's.
Exactly. It's like, woohoo, thank you. I've got it. Yay. It's like the celebration dance before it comes.
Exactly. Now, do you think, and how often are you doing that? Often or just that one time?
Well, now that we're talking about it, I think I'll bring it into more of a regular practice. But I normally do it for like big things. So I guess that would be like once every 3 months or something. But yeah. But, and, you know, I'll do it in workshops as well. But yeah, I think I've just written a note for me to do more thank you dances.
I have found that it works. Now, when I'm in nature, that is a different tone completely. Like I feel grounded. It's like quiet. I'm in contemplation. There's a different vibe there for me. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, it's almost like things are being revealed. For me, I feel nature. I've never had, I've never had an issue with connecting to the heavens, but for me, it's been all about bring the soul back to earth, back to earth, back to earth. And I like need nature like it's my medicine.
Right.
And just if I'm not, and for me, it's about, well, there's the earth element, which I know that like from a like a bodily point of view, it's like we need to be connected to the earth in order to like come back to our natural rhythm, because our natural rhythm is part of the rhythm of the whole planet. You know, we're not separate from the earth. We actually are the earth. And when we disconnect from it, then we kind of fall out of our own rhythm because we're out of the rhythm of the whole planet. So I kind of use it as a practice like that. But also for me, I need nature in order to create, because I'm such a like beauty is how is my quickest way to come back into my spirit, like, and to tune into my soul. And like my first book, Light is the New Black, in particular, I wrote that in Regent's Park Rose Garden here in London, where it literally from park bench to park bench to park bench. And it was like I'd sit in front of a different rose bush or tree or flower or whatever, and I'd take a breath and meditate on that and almost like allow the whispers to come through me. So, yeah, nature to me is like, you know, she's teaching us constantly. And I think also, like, even regardless of whether you're a creator or not, we're all creators, but, you know, like a writer or some other form of expression, I really feel nature is also such a great source of guidance in the sense of, like, I do a practice called intuitive walking, where, you know, if you've got a question, or even if you just want to like work your intuitive muscles, and just set your timer for about 20 minutes and go to your favorite big bit of nature. So it could be a big park or it could be the beach, and you just allow yourself to be moved. You could say by Shakti, or you could say by your spirit, or you could say by the earth itself. And I find that, like, just that openness of actually allowing yourself to be moved, every single time you do it, there is always a sign or always a message or always an answer to the question. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite ways of definitely heightening our connection to the Shakti of all of life, as well as really strengthening our intuition. Because I really believe that we are all intuitive. It's just our connection to that thread, that mysterious thread that really no one can put a name to. We could call it Shakti, we could call it soul, we could call it universe, like who knows what it's called, really. No one can agree on a name. Poets of all the ages and mystics of all the ages have devoted lifetimes to try and, you know, grasp what this is, but we know that there is some mysterious thread which is weaving all of this together. And yeah, to me, it's like, it's all about surrendering, finding ways and tools in order to surrender to that.
I love that. That's beautiful. So are you, I know we all are intuitive, and we all have different levels of intuition. And when the more we practice, the better we get at it. And so, is that one of your gifts, would you say? I mean, I know we all have it, but is that something where you feel is something that you, every single day you're feeling, or you're sensing, or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely born clairsentient, which is clear feeling, and with many of the other senses as well. So I think I always had it. It was open as I came in, and I came in. I don't remember being born that day, but I remember always having that connection to spirit, and always praying, always kind of like bridging the two worlds in a way. So, and always having that fascination with that thread of life and the journey of the soul. And so, but yeah, I do feel as well, it's like, yeah, we can work on it, but I do feel like some of us actually, you know, back in the day, like in ancient tribes, they used to call them shamans. And so they were the ones that did bridge the world. And the difference between then and now is that then everyone knew, like they were recognized by the shamans before. Whereas there are many of us who are living in modern worlds who are really answering the call and maybe have always had that niggle and know that that's who they are. But, we haven't been living in societies and communities where there are the elders who are there to recognize who we really are. So, and we've got so many choices. And so I think that for many, and maybe if there's any people listening who have always had that strong intuition, that clairvoyancy or clairaudience, or it being extremely empathic, like maybe that's you.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel that, I'm sorry, you said that you can feel things.
Mm-hmm.
Does it ever get to be too much? Like you're just like, oh, I can't.
Yeah, I'm in constant learning of all of that. Especially I'm certainly, or up until now anyway, been very much guided to be in the city and very much guided to like be in mainstream life. Prior to me finally surrendering and stepping out of the spiritual closet, I worked in media as a creative director in advertising and as a writer, got amazing training in there, which was priceless really, and just so wonderful for the work I do now. It was really like an apprenticeship in being a writer. And so, I think this is a very common thing. And so the whole protecting of energy, the whole, just like being disconnected from living literally in harmony with like I just spent a month in Kauai, which I think is probably, for me anyway, it like literally is heaven on earth. It's like the best place. Have you been?
Yes.
Oh, so yeah, I was like, oh my God, if I lived somewhere like here, imagine how grounded I would be. I wouldn't have to do half as much spiritual practice as I do now.
Right.
And so my devotional practice, it's like if for me to do my work, I have to do it. Otherwise it's like, there's, of course you can separate what's someone else's energy and what's yours. But as an empathic person, like we mirror what's out there and particularly people who are close to us. So yeah, it's a constant process.
Wow. And do you stay away from things like, I don't know, big venues where there's, I don't know, like a concert or like, do you stay away from things like that, or that doesn't?
Yeah, I tend to. It depends where I am in my cycle, to be honest. If I'm in the spring phase, like after bleeding and then going into ovulation, I'm more likely to be able to kind of like, because I've got more of the yang energy in me,
right?
And so I could probably do it. But yeah, generally speaking, I'm much more of an introvert, and I've always preferred small groups. I've always preferred really genuine close friends who are like, a vibrational match than like the big group of people. But even still, it's like part of my job is to like speak at big events. And I know that that's part of the path and I do love it, but it floors me.
Mm. Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, I'm an empath, and I can't see someone if I see someone in pain or see someone crying, it's like I'm like a mess. Like I can be, I have to not be in a place where there is, I don't know, like wakes and funerals, like that is way too much. Like I know my limits. And so if I go to a wake, it's like I'm in and out in like literally 10 minutes. I mean, I just don't people hang out there, and I just can't imagine. Even hearing us women sobbing is, it just can put me out. I can't even handle it.
And what about like things like watching the news?
I don't.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when I moved to London, which was like 10 years ago, I decided not to cut all news out of my life. Prior to that, I needed it for my job. It was part of like I needed to stay topical, etc.
Right.
And I didn't know how long I'd be in London for. At first it was just like a couple of years, but now it's been like a decade. And yeah, I've been off the news. But like I am feeling I wouldn't say it's like a strong call, but it's like a consideration for me to kind of like go back in there and look at things through a filter. But I gotta say, I'm struggling. I kind of am doing it in baby steps because, I think with the news as well, it's like I really do feel that we do need to stay on top of things, but then also it's like, how do you know what we can trust? And then it's just so much. So yeah, I find it. I've got a couple of girlfriends who are like very on top of it, like they're journalists and they're like politicians and stuff, and so like I ask them to like give me like a weekly digest of what I need to know. But I think it's a constant, it's a tricky line to walk. And yeah, I'm still figuring that one out myself.
Yeah. Newspapers either, my parents get the newspaper every single day. And so my father, it's like, that's his ritual, is his newspaper reading.
Yeah.
Right. So I've always I always thought, well, why can't there be a newspaper of really good things?
Yeah.
Like, of miracles happening, of, I don't know, people, of anything. Rather, it's all this bad stuff. Like, I can't even read it because then these thoughts, like, I can almost visualize the horror because I get a visual when I read it. And then and then I get nightmares. I'm someone that still gets nightmares. And it's just like I can't. So actually, I do avoid, unless I have to watch the news for like weather or something like that. I really try not to, because they always have something like really bad. It's nothing really often that's good. So
yeah, I know what you mean.
So I try to avoid it. And granted, I'm not on top of what's happening current. I just, not completely, not verbatim. I mean, I have an idea, obviously, of what's going on, but I don't know, like the latest, whatever's just happening with, even politically. I'm just like,
Yeah, there's probably a real good market in there for someone to solve that problem. For empaths who want to stay in touch but can't handle it.
That would be good. Yeah, that would be great. A quick break in the show to let you know of an upcoming virtual retreat with me called Overcoming Burnout, Sensual Living for the Highly Empowered Woman. So picture this. Candles lit. You are in your most comfortable jammies, maybe a chai tea or a glass of champagne. Let's get cozy and explore the world of sensuality, the stuff your mother never taught you. Learn how to drop into your feminine, enhance your health, and be the hottest thing on the block. It's like we're just hanging out as girlfriends, just hanging out at home, talking about the juiciest topics. End result? You'll know what it means to be an embodied, sensual woman. So are you ready, sister? Have I seduced you into my bedroom for a 3-hour session? I hope so. The link is below, but you can also find it at margaretromero.com/virtual retreat. It's going to be April 8th from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I so look forward to meeting you virtually and spending some time showing you the world of sensuality. I'm also offering an optional sensual starter kit, which is a selection of the most decadent sensual treats to satisfy and titillate all of your senses. A collection of my most favorite goodies for your ultimate pleasure. You know, writing this book, it was the Rise Sister Rise, like every single chapter, which your chapters were really small. And so they were really, I loved the way you did that, because it's like one concept and you just talked about it. And then you had questions at the end of each chapter. And I thought, this woman is brilliant. And so when you were writing this book, was it constant downloads that you were getting? Like, how were you getting this information?
Yeah, well, it was definitely, it was not a linear process at all. I think I love writing in small chapters because I'm dyslexic. I'm the world's slowest reader ever. And I'm like, especially these days, like with every new year that comes, my attention span, it's just decreasing. And so that's why I write short chapters. And the call to actions at the end, the Rise Sister Rise prompts are so, like I really feel that it's so important that we do the inner work, the inquiry. And so, it's really just prompting like the inner outcome. And so it's like, if you do all of those call to actions, like you will, like it's impossible not to have a personal shift, because it's like the book's not the wise one, it's actually your soul. And so It's just providing that framework. But for me, that the whole book really came to me. I was at the Chalice Well Gardens in Glastonbury, and it was very clear that was the next book to write. And really, they just came in whispers, like each new chapter. Like I said before, our past is always for a reason. And for me, I was a copywriter in advertising. And so everything just comes to me in headlines and I'm like, what's that about? And then it was really just like capturing the whispers as they came. I would say that it was a challenging book to write. Like the writing came so effortlessly and just like very, very clearly. But the process of actually almost like embodying it all, it was like, because also we're talking about the persecution of women through the ages, like the overcoming the fear of sharing the voice, the embodiment of our power. And so for me, it was like, and also the thing about the feminine is that she's got her own time and pace for doing things. And it was like the book was constantly teaching me that. So where like there was a point where I'm really great at kind of like hitting a deadline, getting into gear, using the masculine, the yang in order to do that. But, like it became very evident. I got married during the time of it, actually. I was meant to write it quite quickly because my editor very rightly was like, I feel like this really does need to come out soon. And she was so right, because it came out just before like the US elections and before the Women's March, all of that. And so it really was this big surge, and I felt like I was really being worked as I wrote it, and also being challenged to embody it in full. And so, it was like I had to ask for an extension, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I always hit my deadlines. But it wasn't because the writing wasn't happening quick enough. It was because with every chapter I wrote, it was like I needed to sleep for several hours in order to, and I'm sure you'd have a lot to say with that, with the adrenals and all of that, right? And I think it was an amazing book in that sense, and it definitely worked me as I wrote it. And like another great example is how it was due to come out. It was the beginning of October, and my publisher had organized a really big speaking gig in England here. I think there was like almost 1,000 people, and so it was like I was one of the speakers, and it was essentially me launching the book. So a book on how to rise, and a call to action for other women to rise as well. And it was it was about a week before I was due to launch and literally like go on stage. I broke my left foot. And of course, left is the feminine side.
Mm.
And they say that with bones is that it's like when you fracture or break a bone, one of the metaphysical meanings that people believe in is that it's like, it's almost like a release of a karmic pattern that couldn't be released any other way.
Wow.
And that's exactly how it felt. And it was so challenging because it was like I was being stripped bare of all of the superpowers I used to rely on, i.e., my masculine ones. So when I would teach, I would pretty much like run the energy of the room through my system. So I'm sure that's an adrenal thing as well. And almost like just be like work harder than even the people in the room. And I'd move the energy myself as well as encouraging other people to do it. And I'd be like walking around the stage quite a lot and getting people up and dance. And, you know, so it was kind of like lots of moving of energy. And then here I am launching a book on rising, asking other people to rise, and I can't even stand.
Mm.
And so I had to give a 1-hour keynote really bare. And instead of kind of like working my energy and doing the work, I had to instead just hold my energy, literally sitting in a wheelchair, and then call people towards me. And it was so different to anything I'd ever done before, but it was so much better than anything I'd ever done before.
Wow.
Well,
What significance? How did you break your ankle or
like
foot?
not a good story. It was literally like I got up from my desk and was like walking to the kitchen. It was like
That's
nothing.
it.
It was like, how did that happen? Like I couldn't even like work out how it happened. Like if it was, so I think it was like maybe I was like sitting on my foot. You know how you kind of do that sometimes, and one of my feet got a bit numb, and so I kind of like stumbled. But then it like I can't even remember which foot it was that I was sitting anyway. So yeah, it was one of those things of like, what?
So then you got out of your chair. Maybe your foot that you were sitting on was numb, and then
I just
you stumbled.
yeah, and I was like, ow, that really hurt. And then I just kind of like, I think I just got some ice. I didn't think it was that bad. But then the next day I'm like, oh God, this is really bad. Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. And it was, you know, I think some injuries that happen to us, it's more than just an injury. Like something else is being cleared through. And that was definitely the case here. Like even the event, there is this amazing writer who's with my publishing house and a good friend of mine called Robert Holden. And he called me up, and I'm really good friends with his wife, and he heard that I had broken my foot and he was due to speak at the same event. And he was like, oh, let me drive you. And so it was almost like he was the knight delivering the queen. And like, even like that would have been difficult for me, but it was literally like I had to be pushed in a wheelchair.
Right.
And even one of my mentors, who's now a dear friend, it was like having to, I remember, because I also got sick just before the event. I had this virus. So it was almost like all of those, like I said, those superpowers, any part of me that would have like lent back on that, I wasn't physically able to do it. And so I remember just like, I never normally asked for help. I'd just kind of get on and do it myself. But again, It was the book was teaching me not to. And so I had these two amazing people just like pushing me and like delivering me tea. And it was amazing and uncomfortable, but wonderful. And yeah, it certainly changed me.
Now, when this happened, were you, and it was the left side, were you immediate like, oh my God, feminine side?
Yeah, I was, because I'd also like the years during it, like, and as I was writing the book, my mom had breast cancer. on that side. So so I was very aware of it, and so it was all kind of happening.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
So what are some of the rituals that, I know you talked a little bit about it in your book. I love talking about people's rituals. And so what do you, I'm sure you do different rituals for different things. But is there something that you do on a daily basis that you can share with us?
Well, so, and do you mean rituals as opposed to like a spiritual practice?
Oh, well, I'd love to know both.
Okay, so the one that I do, I wouldn't say, I mean, it is daily, but it's more weekly, is I buy myself the most beautiful flowers I could possibly find, and they tend to be roses, and I arrange them each week. I like clear my altar, and I literally fill my whole house with them. It's like my special self-love slash, like I was saying before, knowing that my spirit needs beauty in order to create. So that's what I do. I'm like looking, I've got like 5 little, I get the little mason jars so I can spread them out. So they've just got like 1 or 2 roses through it. So I can see like 5, 6, 7, 8 of them at the moment. So that's definitely one ritual I do. Another one is I've got a little box. It's like a beautiful Indian looking box, quite small. And I call it my guidance box. And so I get a Post-it note anytime I have a question, and I write it in there and I put it in there. And I've got this kind of pyramid, which I put it inside. And then I do a chant every day. And at the moment, it's a chant called Om Maha Vidyaye Namaha, which is Supreme Wisdom, I bow to you. And so I kind of like connect the two and just surrender to that, and chant that. I'm a Mother Mary girl. I love Mother Mary as a representation of divine Mother. And so I've got a Mother Mary rosary, which I chant just like a mala bead to that chant. So they're probably the ones I do the most.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And when you are, and so like, okay, so rituals, is there something, do you do sort of a protective prayer or ritual before you're either doing a workshop or know that you're going to be around a bunch of people?
Yeah, so I've tried loads and loads of different ones, and recently, it's like probably like about 3 or 4 months ago, I found one which is really working for me. And so that's the one I do all the time now, which is so there's a sacred geometry shape called the Merkaba, which is known as like, it looks like the Star of David, but it's like 2 prisms. So if you imagine, like a star which is made of 2 triangles, but they're prisms. Okay. And so I imagine myself inside that Merkaba. The Merkaba is known as the like a vehicle of light. And I imagine when I'm doing that chant that I'm in the center of it and I'm connecting myself to the heavens and earth, like the light in there. Then when I teach, or if I'm doing a workshop, or even if I'm writing or doing an interview or whatever, I will, or client session, I will imagine myself in that Merkaba. So with the concept of like nothing can penetrate light. So yeah, and another really great way that I do several times a day is a thing called the pillar of light. So if you imagine a channel of light coming from the heavens above down through, almost like through your spine, down the center, like a pillar of light, and then down into the earth, and the same type of pillar coming up from Mother Earth, and then through the spine, and then up to the heavens. So you're receiving the energy from heaven and earth, like the sun, the masculine and the feminine. And it's almost like a workout. So I might be washing my dishes, and I imagine like that pillar of light getting thicker and stronger, with the idea that the more you work it, the thicker it gets. And so it takes up beyond just that spine area. It takes up beyond your whole body. And
Oh,
then that
okay.
ends up becoming your protection. Because I was using lots of different protective tools, but it was probably about a year or two ago, they started not resonating with me and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then I realized it was because either they were like too soft, like they weren't strong enough. They were kind of like, let's do a protective bubble, or it was
Right.
like a bit too angelic. And not that there's anything wrong with that. That has had worked for me in the past, but something had changed, and so they weren't working. I needed something like fiercer. And the other version, which I had, was like almost like looking at the world as bad. So it was like you had to like block out the bad. And it just felt a bit separate to me, like as in like, you versus me or them versus us. And so, yeah, I'd been praying for quite some time. And yeah, that's when eventually the pillar of light and the Merkaba came to me. And they're my favorite tools for protection.
Yeah, I've tried a bunch as well. And way back when I first became a nurse practitioner, God, this is at least 16 years ago. And I was working, it was just regular internal medicine. It was a women's health practice in Manhattan. And there was a woman that came in with this really bad pain in her neck, on the right side of her neck. And she was literally in tears. And so I had already had like Reiki training and like healing touch training and all of these things. And so I thought, oh, okay, I definitely didn't ground that day. I did not do any of those things back then. I just sort of went in for it. So I'm like, well, and so I could feel like the heat and I'm like doing the Reiki and I'm like can sense where the pain is and kind of just like pulling it. Like there's just a technique with healing touch. So she left feeling fine, and my right hand, my thumb, was so painful, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. So then, like a week later, so it finally went away. And then I thought, oh, I need to wash my hands the next time. I need to ground the next time. This is wild. So then I started getting a little like, I can't touch. I can't touch. So that's really sick because who knows what's going to happen. And then about a week later, I don't think I've told that many people this story. So about a week later, a woman comes in, young. She's having abdominal pain. I'm palpating her belly, and I think it's appendicitis. I send her right away for a CAT scan. She does have appendicitis. She goes for surgery. We schedule the whole thing. She gets it done later that day. Done. Okay. So maybe the next day or a couple days later, I start to have pain, abdominal pain. And it starts to get really bad. And so I had the doctor that I was working with examine me. And she was like, okay, you need a CAT scan. This could be your appendix. And I thought, no freaking way.
No way.
So I go down, get a CAT scan. The radiologist who I knew, he's reading the results, and he's like, he said like 7 millimeters enlargement or something like that. He's like, this is the same size exactly as the patient that you sent me a few days ago with the same thing. And I thought, oh my God, like why is it that I'm like getting everything? So it has made me a little scared because, to touch people, because I kept feeling that, and then people were like getting better. Like I had my practice in Santa Fe, and I started seeing patients, and every time they came back for follow-up, they were like, I left there and I felt great. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And then I eventually got really sick and like on death's bed almost. And so since then I've tried different ways. And so I think also I need to do something, because the bubble thing that also I didn't feel like really worked either. Like visualizing any of that,
Yeah, I agree. It's too fuzzy.
Yeah. Like I feel like I need some big time, something major, because to get transference of other people's like illness is just not, I can't, that's not good on any level, not even a little bit. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. That was wild that time.
Wow. That's full on.
So what ended up happening was with the appendix. So I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to get surgery. Like I would never tell any of my patients to never get surgery. So what I did is I went home and I meditated for 3 days. My parents came over. They made me like chicken soup. I took 3 days off, and the pain went away. It just resolved on its own.
Wow.
And I thought, oh God, I'm knocking on wood right now that, that that won't come back. But it did end up resolving. She ended up having surgery, but the pain started to slowly subside. So anyway, that was wild. All right.
Well, I think it's interesting because I feel like it's actually not that rare for empaths to almost like on one hand and healers, etc., to like want to take it away from someone. And this is why It's like, for us to, it's rare to be trained in how to do that. Right. But so crucial when we're doing this work. Like I remember when I was young, I kept on my first real, like this is part of like the first big awakening. I read about this girl who had passed away from like taking a drug at a dance party, and I read about her mum who'd written this article, and I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to find the mum. I just like had this, it was weird. I hadn't had any experience like this, but it was like this knowing that I needed to find the mum and heal her, even though I had no idea what healing meant. Like it was just this longing to be connected with her. Right. And then the next day at school, I was telling one of my friends and she's like, that sounds really, really weird. Like my words were like, I feel like I just need to find the mum and like give her a hug, and I just want to make it better. I want to make it better. Yeah. And I think that's such a thing for empaths and healers. And yeah, as I was telling my friend, she was like, oh my gosh, that woman across the playground looks like her. And it was her. And, I ended up going up to her and, went and heard her speak. She was speaking to the senior students. And so I snuck in and I quickly skipped class. And long story short, we had a wonderful relationship where, in a way I look back and I was like, okay, well, she initiated me as a healer, like the very beginning of my path. I would sit with her and I'd just be like, tell me, tell me how you've grown through this, the incomprehensible thing of losing a child. And I remember sitting there and being like, I am going to take all your pain away. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's like really, and she'd always feel so much better when I was there, but then I'd feel worse. Yeah. But it wasn't her fault. It was me. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is my mission to do this. And it was interesting because like when I was young, I always longed for those wise women, the women who, because she recognized who I was and she saw who I was. And I learned so much. She took me to my first Hay House event, and Hay House ended up being my publisher. And, we'd go to different courses together. And so I really got the beginning of my spiritual education through that relationship and through her. And, I used to call her my angel mum because her name was Angela. And interestingly enough, it was like I dedicated Rise Sister Rise, the book, to my mother as well as Angela. And interestingly enough, like as I was writing it, my mum was sick and my friend Angela was as well. She had lung cancer for several years and she actually died during the writing of that book. And, at the same time, there was like a year period where I really, I had really low energy and I was having trouble breathing. And now I don't mean as in like, oh my gosh, like go to the hospital type of breathing, right. But just like I couldn't exercise and I'd walk around the park and I'd be like, oh, I'm really light on breath. And then when she died, my breath came back. Wow. And so, and I realized then, and, I've been trained, I know how to not take on things and all of that. But then there are people in our lives, and particularly with Angela, it was like that was almost like a decision I had made so long ago. It was different from a client. And so I feel like sometimes with our personal relationships it's really difficult not to take it on. But, we need to keep checking in. What is ours and what is someone else's?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, what is one of the biggest, I know we're kind of coming to a close here, one of the biggest things that you want to leave the listeners with regarding your mission or the reason you wrote your book?
I would just say that like all of the answers that we're longing for are hidden within us. And the more we can connect with nature or find other tools to like enable us to connect back in with that rhythm of life, or connect back in with that intuitive whisper. And it is a whisper. It's soft and it's subtle. So the more ways that we can work at listening to that and surrendering to that, then the easier life gets. But it doesn't mean that like I don't think life is meant to be easy. I think that we are here to learn, and regardless of where we are on our path, it's like we're in a constant state of rising and falling and falling and rising. Like, just look at nature. Like I said before, Mother Earth is constantly teaching us how to be human, and we cannot be constantly rising. We need to let go, just like the autumn leaves fall, in order for spring to come. And so it's so imperative that we surrender to that inconstant part of life. And yeah, I just, out of everything, it's just like, notice nature and notice what it's trying to teach you at every point of every day.
Yeah, there's something that I want to just read from your book, which I love, and it so shows us the vast diversity of a woman. And you write here, a divine power. So we're talking about women, a divine power as fierce as the tides, as great as the mountains, as wild as the jungle, as mysterious as the moonlight, and as bright as the sun. A holy force that has been contained and restrained for millennia, but is ready again to rise. And when I first read that, I just had shivers, and I thought, oh, I have got to, that just signifies and just shows the vastness of who we are as women. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
And then I just leave off every interview with 3 quick questions. First one is, what is currently at your bedside?
Oh, I've got this. It's like a meditation thing. It's called Brain Tap, and it's like linked. It's like a link to an app. It's like uses light technology. It's not very sexy, but it's really good at like calming the nervous system. So it's a great thing for empaths.
Oh, I love it. Does it turn on when is it like an alarm? Or
no, it's like headphones, and then it's got this little visor that you bring down, and then the light and the light comes through the headphones and the visor thing, and sound comes through the headphones as well. And you like link it to an app like on your phone.
Oh, that's
so it's
cool.
basically like meditation but with light.
And it's supposed to
well, you can do all different types of meditations. So I use it for sleeping. So I go into that real deep replenishment mode. But you can use it for lots of different things. A lot of people use it for like PTSD, like soothing the nervous system. But there's a lot of different purposes, like different meditations targeting different things.
Oh, nice. I love that. I haven't heard of that. It's called Brain Tap.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. And let's see. What is one of your most favorite indulgences?
Flowers. Definitely flowers.
And let's see. Is there a book that you're currently reading that you're super into?
I wouldn't say that I'm currently reading, but my favorite book is Anna, Grandmother of Jesus.
What is that called again?
Anna, Grandmother of Jesus.
Oh, okay.
It's a channeled book.
Nice. And okay. And then how can everyone find you? Do you work with people one-on-one or what's...
Yeah, I don't do one-on-one so much anymore, but I've got two ways of working with me online. The first one is the Rise Sister, Rise Sisterhood. So each month I send like my latest teachings and then we gather in the sisterhood. So that's probably like the best way to work with me. Particularly if people resonate with, I'd say your work and the Rise Sister Rise, Rising Feminine. The other way is I've got a course called Work Your Light, which is really a course like for spiritual teachers, healers, light workers. But yeah, everyone can find me. If you want the Rise Sister Rise Sisterhood, it's RebeccaCampbell.me/sisterhood. And yeah, you can sign up. It's like, I think it's like only like £1 for the first month. So there's a special on at the moment. So you're welcome to check that out. And then I'm all over like Facebook and Instagram, etc. My handle's Rebecca Thoughts.
Oh, and are you doing anything live coming up this year at all?
Yeah, I've got quite a lot of workshops in the UK, and I think it looks like I'm just teeing up Canada and a couple in the States later this year, and I'm hoping to get over to Australia. But yeah, if you just go to RebeccaCampbell.me/events, and all the details are there.
Oh, nice. Are you coming to New York by any chance, or East Coast?
I am hoping to go. Yes, so I'm talking to Omega. So it looks like that's
very cool.
The first week of September, but it's not on the site yet. But the dates are there for if you want to save the date.
Oh, nice! I love it there. It's really beautiful.
I've never been.
Oh, it's nice. You're gonna enjoy it.
Great.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom with us. For those of you who have not read the book, you really need to. Rise, Sister, Rise. It's brilliant. You're brilliant, sister, and have the most beautiful weekend.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you love this conversation between Rebecca and I, and you really need to get her book, Rise, Sister, Rise. For more information about her and for all the show notes, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 24. And if you have been loving this podcast and if you've been loving all of these delicious conversations, I would so love it if you can head on over to iTunes and leave a review. Until next week, sisters, speak to you then.